The Galactic Council had kept peace for 12,000 years. 17 different alien species worked together. They made laws. They settled arguments. They built the greatest space station ever made. They called it Nexus Station, and 3 million beings lived there. It floated in the center of known space like a jewel made of crystal and light. War was something they read about in old books. Violence was a thing of the past. The Council believed they had solved the problems that destroyed younger civilizations. They believed they were wise. They believed they were safe. They were wrong. Censor Adept Virith was the first to see it. She belonged to a species called the Quelari. Her body was made of glowing tendrils that changed color based on her emotions. Right now, those tendrils flickered between blue and white. Blue meant confusion. White meant fear. She checked her instruments again. Then 14 more times. The readings made no sense. Archon Sethal, she said quietly. Her voice shook. Something is wrong with my equipment. The Archon was the leader of the Council. He was a Thrakeen, a species that looked like giant insects. He had 4 arms and eyes that could see in every direction at once. He turned several of those eyes toward Virith. What kind of wrong? He asked. The mass readings. There is something approaching our station. She paused. Her tendrils went completely white. It is larger than Nexus Station. The Archon made a clicking sound with his mandibles. That is impossible. Nothing is larger than this station. Run your diagnostics again. I have run them 16 times, Archon. Before he could respond, the main display screen activated. Every being in the Council chamber turned to look. The room held representatives from all 17 species. Some were tall and thin. Some were short and wide. Some floated in liquid tanks. Some existed as clouds of gas held together by energy fields. All of them were old. All of them were wise. All of them had seen many strange things in their long lives. None of them had ever seen anything like this. The ship that came out of hyperspace was not just big. It was impossible. It was like someone had taken a mountain and covered it in black metal. It was like someone had built a city and put engines on it. The vessel was so large that the display screen could not show all of it at once. The bow of the ship, just the front part, was bigger than the largest warship the Council had ever built. Strange structures covered its surface, towers and domes and things that looked like weapons but were too big to be weapons. Lights ran along its hull in harsh white and angry amber colors. They lit up sections of metal that seemed to go on forever. Virith made a small sound. It was the Quelari equivalent of a gasp. By the first equation, she whispered. Nobody else spoke. Nobody moved. The chamber was completely silent, except for the soft hum of the station's systems. 17 species, the rulers of known space, stood frozen in place. Ambassador Rothvan was the first to break the silence. He was a Skitharii, a being covered in hard plates like armor. Those plates were rattling now. It was a sign of deep fear. What is that thing? He asked. His voice was high and thin. What species built it? Where did it come from? Nobody had answers. Archon Sethal forced himself to move. He walked to the tactical display and studied the readings. Each new piece of information made his fear grow stronger. The ship's power output was beyond anything he had ever seen. It produced more energy than the combined fleets of all 17 Council species. Its hull was made of materials that the sensors could not identify. Unknown alloys, unknown composites, technology that was completely foreign to everything the Council knew. And then there were the weapons. The Archon was old. He had studied military history. He knew what weapons looked like, even weapons from species that had died out long ago. The structures along the spine of this ship were weapons. He was certain of it, but they were weapons on a scale that made no sense. Can we identify the species? He asked. Virith's tendrils flickered rapidly. No, Archon. There is no match in our databases. This vessel does not belong to any known civilization. Then we have made first contact, said High Speaker Amalith. She was a Voreen, a species that communicated through telepathy. Her thoughts touched every mind in the room. A new species has found us. Found us. Ambassador Rothvan's plates rattled louder. Look at that ship. That is not a vessel of exploration. That is a weapon of war. That is a planet killer. Whatever species built that thing, they did not come here to talk. We do not know that. Amalith replied. Her mental voice was calm, but even she could not hide her fear completely. Look at it. Rothvan pointed at the display with one clawed hand. Look at the size. Look at the weapons. No species builds something like that unless they intend to use it. We need to evacuate. We need to run, now, before it opens fire. And go where? Archon Sithal asked. If that vessel decides to attack, where could we possibly hide? It tracked us across space. It found our most important station. Running would only delay the inevitable. The chamber fell silent again. On the display, the massive ship held its position. It did not move closer. It did not move away. It did not broadcast any signals. It simply waited, like a predator watching its prey. Minutes passed. Then hours. The council members argued in hushed voices. Some wanted to flee. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to try communication. Nobody could agree on anything. Virith kept watching her sensors. She tracked every tiny movement of the alien vessel. She analyzed its energy patterns. She tried to understand its systems, but the technology was too advanced. It was like a child trying to understand the workings of a star. 3 hours after its arrival, the ship finally moved. A section of its lower hull opened. A smaller vessel emerged. Smaller was a relative term. The craft that floated out of the giant ship was twice the size of the Council's largest diplomatic cruiser. It moved toward Nexus Station at a steady pace. Not too fast, not too slow. It approached like someone walking up to a stranger's door. It is broadcasting, Virith announced. A repeating signal. What does it say? The Archon demanded. Numbers. Mathematical sequences. Prime numbers. Her tendrils shifted to a pale yellow color. Surprise. Archon, this is a standard first contact protocol. They are using universal mathematics. They want to establish communication. Or they want us to lower our shields, Rothvan said. This could be a trick. Archon Sethal stared at the approaching vessel. His compound eyes reflected its harsh lights. He thought about his people. He thought about the 3 million souls living on this station. He thought about the 17 species who had trusted him to lead them. He thought about the giant ship waiting in the darkness, its weapons silent but ready. The Archon made his decision. It was the decision that would change everything. It would change the fate of the galaxy. It would change the future of every species in known space. He did not know this at the time. He only knew that he had to choose, and he chose to be brave. Open a channel, he said. Let us see who has come to visit. The communication link activated with a soft chime, and humanity said hello. The communication screen flickered to life. Every being in the council chamber leaned forward. They had spent hours imagining what the builders of such a ship might look like. Some expected giants. Some expected machines. Some expected creatures of pure energy. Beings so advanced that physical form no longer mattered to them. What they saw was none of these things. The creature on the screen was small. It stood on 2 legs. It had 2 arms, 2 eyes, and a face made of soft flesh. No armor, no claws, no natural weapons of any kind. It wore a simple uniform of dark fabric. It looked fragile. It looked weak. It looked like something that any predator species could kill without effort. This small, soft creature commanded the most powerful warship the galaxy had ever seen. This is Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth Navy vessel Prometheus, the creature said. Its voice was ordinary. Just air moving through a throat. Nothing special. Nothing impressive. We come in peace and request formal dialogue with the governing body of this region of space. Archon Sethal needed a moment to find his voice. He had prepared himself for many things. He had not prepared himself for this. You are the commander of that vessel? He finally asked. Your species built that ship? Yes, Admiral Chen replied. A small movement crossed her face. Later, the council would learn this was called a smile. I have the honor of commanding the Prometheus. How many of your kind serve aboard such a ship? 8,000. 400 personnel. 8,000. The number echoed through the chamber. 8,000 small, soft creatures, operating a vessel that could destroy worlds. It seemed wrong. It seemed impossible. Yet there it was. High Speaker Amaleth projected her thoughts toward the human. She was careful. She was gentle. She did not try to read the alien mind. She only sent her words. We have never encountered your species before. Where is your home world? How large is your territory? Admiral Chen's smile grew slightly wider. Our home is called Earth. It orbits a star we call Sol. As for our territory, We currently control 312 inhabited star systems. We have several thousand more under survey and development. The words hit the Council like a physical blow. 300 systems. The Galactic Council, with all its wisdom and all its history, controlled 421 systems. They had built that territory over 12,000 years, 17 species working together, countless generations of effort, and this unknown species, these soft little creatures, had built nearly as much. That cannot be correct, Ambassador Ruthven said. His voice cracked. We have sensors across the galaxy. We would have detected you. We would have seen your ships. We would have found your worlds. Your sensors cover this side of the galaxy, Admiral Chen said. She spoke calmly, as if discussing the weather. We developed on the opposite side. By the time your survey probes reached our space, we had already learned to avoid them. Avoid them? Archon Sethal felt a chill run through his body. You knew about us? We have known about the Council for approximately 60 years. We have spent that time watching, learning, studying your languages, your cultures, your history. The human paused. We wanted to understand you before we introduced ourselves. 60 years. For 60 years, this species had watched the Council without anyone knowing. They had learned everything about the 17 species. They had mapped their territory. They had studied their defenses. They had done all of this in complete silence. Why? Amalith asked. Why watch for so long? Why not make contact sooner? We wanted to be ready, Admiral Chen said. First contact is important. We did not want to make mistakes. Ready, Ruthven repeated. The word came out like a hiss. You mean you wanted to make sure you were strong enough? You wanted to make sure you could win if we proved hostile? The human considered this for a moment. Then she nodded. Yes, that is also true. The honesty was more frightening than any threat could have been. This species had prepared. They had planned. They had built weapons of unimaginable power, and only when they were certain they could not be defeated did they reveal themselves. Sensor Adept Virith had been running continuous scans throughout the conversation. Her tendrils had slowly shifted from white to a deep purple. Purple meant something had shocked her beyond words. Now she finally spoke. Archon, I have completed my analysis of their weapon systems. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. The main weapon array along the ship's spine, she continued. It is a gravitational manipulation system. They have weaponized singularity generation. Explain that in simple terms, the Archon demanded. Virith's tendrils trembled. They can create small black holes. Controlled. Directed. A single sustained burst from that weapon would collapse local space-time. Everything within 3 light seconds would cease to exist. Our station, our ships, us. We would simply stop being. The silence that followed was complete. Not even breathing could be heard. Admiral Chen watched them through the screen. Her face showed no pride. No threat. Just patience. The Prometheus is one of 6 Tangent-class vessels currently in service, she said. We have 14 more under construction. 6 ships, each one capable of destroying everything the Council had built. 6 weapons that could end civilizations. And they were building more. You said you came in peace, Archon Sethal said slowly. Yet you arrive with the power to annihilate us. How do you explain this? Would you have listened if we arrived in something smaller? The question hung in the air. The Archon thought about it. He thought about how his people treated lesser species. He thought about how the Council dealt with civilizations that could not defend themselves. They were fair. They were kind. But they were also secure in their power. If a small, unknown species had arrived in a small ship, asking to talk, would the Council have taken them seriously? Or would they have sent them away with polite words and empty promises? He knew the answer. He did not like it. We did not come here to threaten you, Admiral Chen continued. We came here because we have been alone for a very long time. On our side of the galaxy, we found many species. Some joined us willingly, others did not. A shadow passed across her face. We hoped that here, on your side of the galaxy, we might find something different. We hoped to find equals. Partners. Partners? Ruthven made a sound of disbelief. You have the power to destroy us. What kind of partnership can exist under such conditions? The only kind that matters, the human replied. One based on mutual respect. We will not pretend to be weak. We will not hide what we are. But we also will not use our strength to dominate or control. We want friends, Ambassador, not subjects. Archon Sidhal studied the small creature on the screen. He looked at her soft skin and her strange eyes. He saw no deception there, no hidden threats, only a simple, honest desire. But he also saw something else. Behind those eyes, behind that calm face, he saw the weight of terrible knowledge. This creature had seen things, done things. She commanded weapons that could kill stars, and she spoke of peace with the same mouth. The Archon realized something in that moment, something that changed how he saw everything. These humans were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they were strong. They chose peace the way a giant chooses not to crush an insect, not because they could not, but because they had decided not to. That was far more terrifying than any weapon. We will need time to discuss this, the Archon said. Your arrival is unexpected. Your power is overwhelming. We must consult among ourselves before we can respond properly. Admiral Chen nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. We have waited 60 years. We can wait a little longer. The communication screen went dark. The council chamber erupted into chaos. The council debated for 9 days. During that time, Admiral Chen shared information freely. She sent cultural files, scientific databases, historical records. She withheld nothing. Every question the council asked, she answered. Every request they made, she fulfilled. The more they learned, the more confused they became. On the third day, they received human art, paintings of landscapes, sculptures of the human form, music that ranged from soft and gentle to loud and aggressive. The variety was staggering. No species in the council produced such different forms of expression. It was as if humans could not decide who they were. On the fourth day, they received human literature, stories of love, stories of war, stories of hope and despair, tales where heroes sacrificed themselves for others, tales where villains destroyed everything they touched. The council members read these stories and found themselves moved in ways they did not expect. These soft creatures knew how to reach into the heart and twist it. On the fifth day, they received human history. That was when everything changed. The records showed a species that had nearly destroyed itself not once, but many times. Long before they reached the stars, humans had invented weapons of terrible power. They called them nuclear weapons. They could burn entire cities in an instant. They could poison the land for generations, and humans had used these weapons on each other. This is madness, Ambassador Rothvan said as he reviewed the files. They turned these weapons on their own people, their own world. What kind of species does this? The records showed more. Chemical weapons that melted flesh, biological weapons that spread disease, machines designed only to kill, with no living hand to guide them. Humans had invented every horror that could be imagined, and then they had used those horrors on themselves. They had poisoned their own air. They had killed their own oceans. They had driven countless other species on their world to extinction, not through accident, not through ignorance, through greed and hatred and indifference. They are monsters, Rothvan declared. Look at what they have done. Look at what they are capable of. We cannot trust such beings. We cannot allow them near our people. But High Speaker Amalith had been reading different files. She had found the records of what came after. Look at this, she said, projecting the information to every mind in the chamber. They stopped. The files showed a turning point, a moment when humanity looked at what it had become and chose a different path. It was not easy. It was not quick. It took generations of work, but slowly, painfully, humans had changed. They cleaned their air. They healed their oceans. They put down their weapons of mass destruction. They built systems to help the poor and heal the sick. They created laws to protect the weak from the strong. They looked into the abyss, Amalith said. They saw their own darkness, and they decided to become something else. Words, Rothvan spat. Pretty words to hide ugly truth. They still built that ship. They still created weapons that can destroy worlds. They have not changed at all. Perhaps they have changed more than you realize. Every head turned. Admiral Chen had requested a second meeting, and the council had agreed. Now she stood before them in holographic form, projected from her vessel into the chamber itself. She looked even smaller in person, even more fragile. Yet every being in the room felt her presence. "You have read our history," she said. "You have seen what we were, what we did. You have every right to be afraid." "Then explain," Archon Sethal said. "Help us understand. You nearly destroyed yourselves, yet now you speak of peace. You built weapons capable of killing stars, yet you say you want friends. These things do not match." Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made everyone listen. "On our world, we have a story. It is about a man who committed terrible crimes. He hurt many people. He caused great suffering. Then one day, he realized what he had done. He was filled with shame. He wanted to die for his sins." She paused, but instead of dying, he chose to live. He spent the rest of his life helping others. He saved more lives than he had taken. He brought more joy than he had brought pain. When he finally died, old and tired, the people he had helped remembered him not for his crimes, but for his redemption. "A nice story," Rothvan said. "But stories are not reality." "No, they are not. But they show us what we want to be." Admiral Chen looked directly at the ambassador. "We know what we are capable of. We carry that knowledge every day. It is a burden we cannot put down. So we do the only thing we can. We try to be better. We try to prove that our worst moments do not define us." "And the weapons?" Archon Sethal asked. "Why build such terrible things if you truly want peace?" "Because the universe is vast. Because we cannot assume that every species we meet will share our choice. Because we have a responsibility to protect those who trust us." Admiral Chen's eyes swept the chamber. "We came to you with overwhelming force not to threaten you, but to show you exactly what we are. We could have hidden our strength. We could have pretended to be weak and harmless. We chose not to. Why? Because deception is not partnership. You deserve to know the truth. Humanity represents both things: the capacity for extraordinary destruction and the choice to build instead. We wanted you to see both. We wanted you to understand what you would be dealing with." Censor Adept Virith spoke up. Her tendrils had shifted to a color no one had seen before. It was somewhere between gold and green. Later she would tell others that it represented something she had never felt: hope, mixed with fear. "In your travels," she asked, "have you encountered other species? What happened to them?" Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "We have encountered 43 spacefaring species, and 31 joined our Federation willingly. They saw the benefits of cooperation, shared technology, mutual defense, trade, peace. They chose to be our partners. The other 12? The human's face changed. The softness remained, but something hard appeared behind her eyes. 7 were non-intelligent swarm organisms. They could not think as individuals. They could not negotiate. They spread from world to world, consuming everything. We contained them. We built barriers they cannot cross. And the remaining 5? 3 were predator species. They saw other intelligent beings as food, as resources to be used. They refused all attempts at communication." Admiral Chen's voice grew colder. "They no longer exist." The chamber went silent. "You killed them," Amalith whispered. "Entire species. We ended their ability to harm others. We gave them every chance to change. They refused." Admiral Chen met the High Speaker's gaze without flinching. "When something cannot stop killing, you have 2 choices. Let it continue, or stop it forever. We made our choice. And the last 2 species, the Kethari and the Vorax, both had great empires. Both believed themselves superior to all others. Both declared war on humanity." A pause. "The Kethari surrendered after we demonstrated what a single Titangent-class vessel could do to a fortified moon. They are now members of our Federation. They contribute. They thrive. They have learned that strength does not require cruelty." "And the Vorax?" Admiral Chen's face showed no emotion. "They did not surrender. They swore to fight until the last Vorax died. They meant it." She took a breath. "We honored their choice. The Vorax are gone." The words fell like stones into still water. Ambassador Rothvan opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. For the first time, his plates had stopped rattling. He was beyond fear. He was somewhere past it, in a place where terror and respect mixed together. These humans, these small, soft, fragile creatures, they had ended an entire species. They had wiped them from existence, and they spoke of it not with pride, not with shame, but with simple acceptance. This is what we are. Their silence seemed to say, this is what we are capable of. Now you know. The question was, what would the council do with that knowledge? The 9th day arrived. The council had to make a decision. For 8 days, they had argued. They had studied. They had questioned Admiral Chen and her officers. They had analyzed every piece of information the humans had shared. They had run simulations and calculated probabilities. They had done everything that wise beings should do when faced with a choice that would shape the future. Now they sat in the great chamber, all 17 species, and prepared to vote. Archon Sethal stood at the center of the room. His compound eyes reflected the faces of every representative. He had led this council for 300 years. He had guided them through crises and celebrations. He had never felt the weight of leadership as heavily as he felt it now. We have heard the arguments, he said. We have seen the evidence. We know what humanity is, a species of contradiction. They are capable of great evil and great good. They have destroyed and they have created. They have killed and they have saved. He paused and looked toward the window. Outside, in the darkness of space, the Prometheus waited. Its massive form blocked the stars like an artificial eclipse. The question before us is simple, the Archon continued. Do we accept humanity as partners? Do we open our borders to them? Do we trust them with the future of our civilizations? Ambassador Rothven rose from his seat. His plates had stopped rattling days ago. Now he moved with a strange calm. I have made my position clear, he said. These humans are dangerous. They are unpredictable. They are young, barely 3 centuries into their space age, yet they have already built weapons that rival our greatest achievements. What will they build in another 3 centuries? What will they create in 1,000 years? Is that not an argument in their favor? High Speaker Amalith asked. A species that advances so quickly, that creates so much in so little time. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Or imagine what they could do to us, Rothven countered. They have already shown they are willing to destroy entire species. What happens when we disagree with them? What happens when our interests conflict? Do we trust them not to turn those star-killing weapons on us? They had the power to destroy us from the moment they arrived, said a voice from the liquid tank in the corner. The speaker was Duleth, representative of the Morani, a species that lived in water. They did not. They asked to talk instead. A trick, a tactic. They want our trust, so they can take our territory without firing a shot. If they wanted our territory, Ambassador, they would already have it. Deleth's words bubbled through the translation system. Did you see the size of that ship? Did you read the tactical reports? They do not need tricks. They do not need tactics. If humanity wanted to conquer us, we would already be conquered. Rothven had no answer to this. It was true, and everyone knew it. Archon Sethal raised a hand for silence. I would like to share something, he said. During these 9 days, I have been studying human behavior. Not their weapons, not their technology, their behavior. How they treat each other, how they treat the species that have joined them. He touched a control, and images appeared on the main display. The first image showed a human city. Tall buildings reached toward the sky. Parks and gardens broke up the urban landscape. Beings of many different species walked the streets together. Some were obviously alien, some were clearly human. All moved freely, without fear. This is one of their colony worlds, the Archon explained. It is home to 3 species: humans, the Kethari, and a people called the Thessians. The Kethari are the ones who surrendered to humanity after that demonstration of power. They were enemies. Now look at them. The image changed to show a school. Human children sat next to Kethari young. They learned together. They played together. They shared food and stories and laughter. This is not the behavior of conquerors, the Archon said. This is the behavior of partners. Pretty pictures prove nothing, Rothven said. But his voice had lost some of its certainty. Perhaps not. But consider this. The Archon brought up another image. It showed a hospital. Inside, human doctors worked alongside alien medical staff to treat patients of many species. Their medical technology is generations ahead of ours. They share it freely. They train our doctors. They heal our sick. They ask nothing in return except friendship. There must be a cost, Rothven insisted. Nothing is free. What do they gain from this? I asked Admiral Chen the same question. The Archon turned to face the ambassador directly. Do you know what she said? Enlighten me. She said that humans spent thousands of years alone on their world. They had no one to talk to, no one to share their discoveries with, no other intelligent species to learn from or teach. They were alone in their corner of the universe, and that loneliness nearly drove them to destroy themselves. The chamber was very quiet now. When they finally reached the stars, they hoped to find others like them, thinking beings, people they could know. Instead, they found empty worlds and dead civilizations and species that wanted only to kill. Again and again, they reached out, and again and again, they found nothing but enemies. The Archon's voice grew softer. 31 species have joined their federation. 31 peoples who chose partnership over conflict. But that number is small compared to the emptiness humans have faced. They have crossed half a galaxy, and they have found so few friends. He looked around the chamber at the 17 species represented there. We are not just a potential ally to them. We are proof that they are not alone. We are evidence that the universe contains more than predators and swarms and monsters. We are what they have been searching for since they first looked up at the stars. High Speaker Amalith nodded slowly. That explains much. Their honesty, their patience, their willingness to share. They are not trying to conquer us. They are trying to impress us. Like a young being trying to make friends. A young being with star-killing weapons, Rothven muttered. Yes, and that is perhaps the most important thing of all. The Archon walked to the great window and stared out at the massive ship beyond. They showed us everything. Their history, their weapons, their capacity for destruction. They hid nothing. Do you understand what that means? They want us to fear them. No, Ambassador. They want us to trust them. And trust cannot exist without truth. The Archon turned back to face the council. They could have come to us with sweet words and hidden agendas. They could have pretended to be something they are not. Instead, they showed us the best and worst of what they are. They laid their souls bare and said, this is us. All of us. The light and the dark. Can you accept us anyway? Silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, High Speaker Amalith stood. I vote to accept humanity into partnership with the Council, she said. I do this not because I am certain they are trustworthy. I do this because they have earned the chance to prove themselves. They have shown us honesty when deception would have been easier. They have offered friendship when conquest was within their grasp. These are not the actions of monsters. These are the actions of a people trying very hard to be good. One by one, other representatives rose. The Morani, the Quillari, the Voreen. Species after species stood to show their support. Ambassador Rothven remained seated. 3 others stayed with him. They were afraid, and their fear was not unreasonable. But they were outnumbered. When the count was complete, 13 species had voted yes. 4 had voted no. The motion passed. Archon Sethal activated the communication link to the Prometheus. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired. She looked hopeful. She looked like someone who had been waiting for a long time. Admiral, the Archon said, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I am honored to welcome humanity to our community of species. May this be the beginning of a long and fruitful partnership. The human smiled. It was a small expression, just a movement of facial muscles, but it carried more emotion than any words could express. Thank you, Archon. You will not regret this decision. Somewhere in the darkness of space, aboard a ship that could kill worlds, 8,000 humans let out a breath they had been holding for 60 years. They were not alone anymore. 300 years passed. The partnership between humanity and the Galactic Council grew stronger with each decade. Trade routes connected hundreds of worlds. Scientists from dozens of species worked together in great research stations. Children learned the languages and customs of beings their grandparents had never imagined. The fears that Ambassador Rothven had voiced never came true. Humanity did not conquer. They did not betray. They did not turn their terrible weapons on their allies. Instead, they did exactly what they had promised. They shared. They protected. They built. The fleet of Titangent-class vessels grew to 20 ships. Each one was crewed by beings from multiple species. Human captains commanded alien officers. Alien engineers maintained human weapons. The ships became symbols not of terror, but of unity. Where the Titans went, peace followed. Old enemies became friends. The Kethari, who had once declared war on humanity, now provided some of the finest officers in the fleet. The 4 species who had voted against the partnership eventually changed their minds. Ambassador Rothven himself, in his final years, admitted that he had been wrong. The humans had kept every promise they made. It seemed the galaxy had finally found balance. Then the Void Collective arrived. The first warning came from a deep space monitoring station on the edge of known space. The station detected something approaching, something vast, something wrong. The readings made no sense. The mass signatures were impossible. The energy patterns were like nothing anyone had ever seen. The object, whatever it was, moved through space without engines. It simply pushed forward, consuming everything in its path. Sensor Adept Virith, now ancient by Quillari standards, studied the data from her position on Nexus Station. Her tendrils had faded with age, but her mind remained sharp. She had been the first to see the Prometheus all those centuries ago. Now she was among the first to see this new threat. By the first equation, she whispered. The words felt familiar. She had said them before, long ago, when she had seen something impossible. What is this thing? The answer came slowly, piece by piece, as more data arrived. The Void Collective was not a single ship. It was not even a single species. It was a swarm, a hive mind. Billions upon billions of entities linked together into one vast consciousness. It had no homeworld because it had consumed its homeworld long ago. It had no territory because it did not believe in territory. It believed only in growth. The collective had crossed the space between galaxies. It had done this before. It had done this many times. In its long existence, it had consumed over 100 galaxies. Every star, every world, every living thing, all had been absorbed into the endless hunger of the swarm. Now it had come here. The council reacted with panic. Emergency sessions stretched for days. Plans were made and discarded. Fleets were assembled and found lacking. The combined military forces of 17 species, plus the 31 who had joined humanity's federation, were nothing compared to what was coming. The Void Collective did not negotiate. It did not communicate. It simply consumed. There was no reasoning with it. There was no surrendering to it. There was only one choice: fight or die. Admiral Chen Wei had retired decades ago. She had lived a long life for a human. She had seen humanity rise from feared strangers to trusted allies. She had helped build the peace that now faced destruction. Her replacement, Admiral Marcus Okonkwo, came to visit her as the crisis deepened. "We cannot win," he told her. His voice was heavy with despair. "Our simulations show that even if we throw everything we have at the collective, we can only slow it down. We might buy the galaxy a few years, maybe a few decades, but in the end, it will consume everything." Chen looked out the window of her home. She could see the stars. So many stars. So many worlds full of life. "A few decades is not nothing," she said. "It is not enough." "For what? For survival?" The old admiral turned to face her successor. "Marcus, we knew this day might come. We knew that somewhere in the universe, there might be something we could not defeat. Something bigger than us. Something worse than anything we had faced before. Then why did we build the fleet? Why did we make promises we could not keep? Because we could keep them. For a time. For 300 years, we kept them. We protected our allies. We gave them peace." Chen smiled sadly. "Now the time has come to keep the last promise. The hardest one." Admiral Okonkwo understood. He did not want to understand, but he did. The plan was simple. The wormhole network that connected the galaxy could be collapsed. If done correctly, the destruction would trap the Void Collective in a small section of space. The collapse would also destroy everything nearby, including whatever ships remained in the area. Someone would have to stay behind to trigger the collapse. Someone would have to die. The human fleet volunteered as one. On the day of the operation, 12 Tangent-class vessels took position at the heart of the wormhole network. Their crews had said goodbye to their families. They had written letters that would be delivered after they were gone. They had made their peace. Admiral Okonkwo commanded from the bridge of the Prometheus, the same ship that had made first contact 3 centuries ago. Around him, humans and aliens worked together. Quillari and Threkeen, Mirani and Kethari, beings from a dozen species, all willing to die for the galaxy they had built together. The Void Collective came. It filled the sky like a living shadow. Countless entities moved as one. driven by a hunger that had consumed 100 galaxies. They did not understand fear. They did not understand mercy. They understood only the need to grow. The Titans opened fire. Singularity projectors tore holes in reality. Missiles carrying antimatter payloads exploded among the swarm. Energy beams of impossible power cut through the darkness. For a moment, just a moment, the collective was pushed back. Then it adapted. It always adapted. The entities changed their patterns. They absorbed the damage. They kept coming. Begin the collapse, Admiral Okonkwo ordered. On Nexus Station, far from the battle, the Council watched through long-range sensors. They saw the wormhole network begin to fail. They saw the massive ships of the human fleet holding their position as reality twisted around them. They saw the Void Collective trying to escape, trying to break through, being held back by the combined fire of 12 Titans. High Speaker Amelith wept. Her telepathic cries touched every mind on the station. "They are dying for us," she broadcast. "They are dying so we can live." The collapse accelerated. Space folded in on itself. Stars disappeared. Worlds vanished. The section of the galaxy where the wormhole network had existed simply stopped being. When it was over, the Void Collective was trapped. It still existed, somewhere in that twisted space, but it could not escape. It could not reach the rest of the galaxy. The 12 Titangent-class vessels were gone. Their crews were gone. Admiral Okonkwo was gone. They had bought the galaxy time. Not years. Not decades. Centuries. Perhaps millennia. The historians would argue about it for generations. They would debate whether the sacrifice was necessary. They would wonder if another solution could have been found. They would write long books and hold long discussions. But the ordinary people of the galaxy did not argue. They remembered. They remembered that humanity had arrived with weapons of terrible power. They remembered the fear. They remembered the Council freezing in the face of something it could not understand. They remembered Admiral Chen Wei standing before them, soft and small, explaining what her species truly was. And they remembered the end. They remembered 12 ships holding the line. They remembered thousands of beings, human and alien together, choosing to die so others could live. They remembered the light of collapsing stars and the silence that followed. The fear had been real. The power had been real. The weapons that could kill worlds had been real. But in the end, what mattered was what humanity chose to do with that power. They chose to protect. On every world in the galaxy, monuments were built. Statues of human admirals stood next to sculptures of Quelari sensor officers. Memorial walls bore the names of Thrakeen engineers and Morani pilots. The species that had once feared humanity now honored them. Archon Sethal had died long before the Void Collective came, but he had left behind a message to be read if the worst ever happened. The Council played that message on the anniversary of the sacrifice. "I remember the day they arrived," the recording said. The old Archon's voice was thin with age, but his words were clear. "I remember how afraid we were. A ship bigger than worlds, weapons that could destroy stars, and inside that ship, small soft creatures who spoke of peace." The recording paused. "I was afraid of what they could do. I should have been grateful for what they chose to do instead. Remember this. If nothing else, humanity's greatest power was never their weapons. It was their ability to choose. Again and again, despite everything, they chose to be better than their worst impulses. They chose to protect instead of destroy. They chose to build instead of burn. And in the end, they chose to die so that we could live." Another pause. "Longer this time. Do not mourn them. Honor them. Live well." That is what they would have wanted. That is why they sacrificed themselves. The message ended. Outside, the stars shone on. So many stars. So many worlds. So much life. Still growing. Still learning. Still reaching for the sky. All of it saved by the choice of a species that had once nearly destroyed itself. All of it saved by humanity. The end.